Listen, guys, I didn't want to talk about it, but if that many people are going to message me about it, then let's talk about it. Here are my 10 takeaways on the Sister Hong incident in Nanjing, China. Long story short, TLDR, desperate people do desperate things. But let's get into the reason behind the desperation. Why does it exist and what can be done about it? Or can there be anything done about it? Let's get into my point number one, guys. By the way, real quick, there's a really funny comedian influencer in Singapore that looks almost exactly like Sister Hong.
The fact that I've gotten multiple comments telling me that I look like Sister Hong, and I'm not talking about one or two, I think I've gotten over 20 comments.
But as a real woman, so I don't know what that means. You guys take it for what it is. Point number one, man, I think it's pretty clear from the details of this incident that Chinese men in mainland China feel pretty deprived and pretty desperate for women, female attention, female desirability, some sort of intense biological passion that is very, very, very difficult to achieve in China, because I think in a macro sense, the society is not hyper-passionate, it's not religious, it's not hypersexual, it's essentially the opposite of Colombia and Brazil. That's why they have all the AI quants there and all the manufacturing for all these hardcore brain industries, but not a lot of sex, to be honest. And when people are desperate, they do desperate things. Like, have you ever tried to trade stock options? Like, I've tried to trade stock options on about 3 hours of sleep, 0 DTE. It's not a good idea. You make wonky reads. Think about it. There's so many Snickers commercials about it. Are you hangry? Are you being grumpy? Are you making bad decisions because you have no nutrients and no caloric fuel to burn in your brain that's good nutrients? You make bad reads. A lot of these guys in this Sister Hong incident probably really regret the reads that they made, but it was driven from some sense of deprived desperation, much like people using gutter oil, if you guys know about China. Do you think anybody that had access to real oil would ever use gutter oil? But maybe they felt like, if I'm cooking chow mein on the side of the Shanghai streets for San Kwai, I don't have any other choice. I gotta use gutter oil. Now, yes, that was obviously past the threshold of what was acceptable, and that's what gave China a bad name in those eras. But I'm just saying there's some sense of deprivation or impoverished situation, at least within that sector of life. Point number two, the desperation for female attention or female presenting attention or whatever it is clearly there for even above average males on the SMV chart in China. That's how crushing the underlying options Greeks are in China right now for men. You can be an above average dude, and it seems like Sister Hong, I don't know, like her tastes were his or her, whatever, their taste was like in above, some above average, shuai, handsome looking dudes or whatever. Even them, if they lack the status of being Gao Fu Shuai and being Han You Qian or Fu Dai or whatever, they're still in this situation of desperation, and that is a function of the environment. It's a little bit like being, did you know that if you are a decent mid-tier finance worker in Bangkok, you still might only make 2K USD a year? I mean, 2K USD a month for a job that requires the same grad school degree that in the West would at least get you 8K a month. So it goes to show you, I'm talking about the exact same job in Bangkok could get you paid a fourth. Yes, and there is a lower cost of living, but it's not a quarter of the cost of living. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? But so I'm saying that there are certain people in situations where you tried hard and you did better than most people, but your outcomes are still being hyper depressed, suppressed by whatever is the function of the environment, right? Point number three. Are Chinese women to blame at all? Now, by the way, guys, I'm not fully blaming them. I'm just echoing something that I've even seen Chinese commentators talk about. Because there's commentators in China breaking down this Sister Hong incident and analyzing the more macro takeaways from it. However, they are limited in how much they can criticize Chinese society at large, because obviously who is responsible for designing Chinese society, then they cannot criticize certain things. They cannot go past certain guardrails. I can go past the guardrails. But as far as a lot of people saying Chinese women, they only bring out that excited, vivacious Latina side for like Ukrainian gamers that look like MMA guys, or for tall white guys that look like Benedict Cumberbatch or Hugh Grant. I think that there is some truth to that, but we also have to analyze why that is. Is it because the guys cannot embody that? Is it because they're just looking for Jungkook and whatever, or the girls are like, if I'm gonna get with a Chinese guy, it has to be Jackson Wang? For some reason, both, I would say, to be honest, and this is on a whole nother tangent, like Chinese American women, as well as Chinese women in China, can, on a probability basis, struggle to be excited by their own men. Now, I think that's a little bit different than Japan and Korea. I think Japanese and Korean women are more like not to say that they don't still suffer from the same issues. I think Viet guys even, sometimes can suffer from the same issues. But in terms of the 10 out of 10 extremity, do I think that because of the lack of bro coaching of Chinese male culture and society, lack of release valves, lack of developmental grooves, lack of developmental academies, whether you want to call them informal or formal, Chinese women are probably the least excited for their men of any group on earth. I gotta say it. I'm saying it. I can't. Show me another group. Show me an alternative. Give me an alternative answer. If you say, oh, no, that's not true. And it's both. It's because the guys are not treated, taught to either embody a John Cena or a swashbuckling Jack Sparrow, either of those. Neither of them, because it's just social engineering. Chinese guys are really taught to value STEM and stability, and those things are really great on a GDP report or developing critical fields such as cobalt and lithium. How do you cultivate the cobalt and lithium and then turn that into microchips, semiconductors, EVs, UI, just everything nerdy that gets your country rich and dominant on a manufacturing level is just not what biologically taps into a woman's dopamine receptors on a primal level, right? And I just think that there was a lot of social engineering in China where dopamine was sacrificed. And I think that because women assimilate more to global norms, even if they're still in China, and especially if they move to the West, they are like, they're just over it. They don't want to be in the hyper STEM stable thing. I'm sure they still see the value in it in terms of like, yes, that's how a civilization is built. They don't want China to only be like Colombia or Brazil or whatever like that. It's like all sexuality, no manufacturing, right? But at the end of the day, there's other cultures that seem more balanced, right? Like, to be fair, like, yes, you could argue the balance is getting out of whack now, but white guys seem more balanced. Koreans seem more balanced. Even Japanese seem more balanced. Vietnamese with money, the ones that have money, they seem more balanced. They seem like they're distributing their life energy water into the buckets more holistically they're basically, when you're pouring water from a pitcher into these different cups in your chest, in your life, how are you distributing the water? If you only pour all the water into like academics and money, there's a lot of cups that are left unattended to, and that makes people feel like not excited. I don't know, holisticness just matters a lot, right? Point number 5, China is very different from the West because they enslave their own people's dopamine versus enslaving other ethnicities of people. If you look at the conquistadors of Spain, obviously Anglo-Americans with the slave trade, they basically, when you look at Romans enslaving Slavic people in history in Western Europe, Irish, the relation, indentured servitude with the Irish and the Anglos, basically the other powers, when they were coming up, there was a lot of resource extraction from third world countries, India, things like that, Kanapur diamond, things like that. So basically you could maintain dominance and the dopamine. But China basically enslaved, like quote unquote, like enslaved its own population's dopamine to create the dominance. That's what is so different about China. Basically, a lot of things, there was no time to be cool. Like all the dopamine receptors were actually poured into productivity, stability, and economic conquest. But now you have kids, just like kids at my church, that had to do 3 hours of piano every day, 2 hours of cello, 3 hours of homework. Yeah. But there's 24 hours in a day. You just got to treat like being a student like your job. A lot of Taiwanese kids at my church, even though, yeah, some of them went to Stanford and stuff like that. But like, yeah, of course, the probability was they were going to end up with money and achievements, academic accolades, but zero game, zero swag. And whether I don't think Chinese culture values game or swag, but I'm saying that those things matter functionally, regardless of whether the culture values or prepares the men to have game or swag or not, or the girls are conditioned to respond to game or swag or not. Regardless of that, it is biological fundamentally, guys. Point number 6, I think that other Sinospheric cultures, like the offshoots of Sinosphere, whether in an ancient sense like Japan, Korea, and Vietnam, or in a more modern diasporic sense, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, some parts of Malaysia, some parts of Thailand, Bangkok to be specific, they are better balanced, right? Yes, they all share some level of Confucianism, statehood, Buddhism, Taoism, a little bit, but Japan has samurai stoicism. The whole endless fashion cool. Why does Kanye want to live in Japan? If you look at Korea, they got a looks obsession, but they're all good looking. Whether it's real or it's not, they're good looking. And they have this patriarchy from the Manchurian, Mongolian heritage. And, they just got look at this article from the Korea Times. They published this in the Korea Times, why Korea is cooler than China. And look, you can argue it's American satellite state. It can't make its own geopolitical decisions. We're not talking about all that. We're just talking about functionally preventing things from the Sister Hong situation from happening due to more masculinity, more release valves, more of a bro-ish culture. I feel like a lot of Korean guys remind me of frat guys without even being in a frat, because they're in the frat of like Kappa Omega, Korean. And then you've got Vietnam. It's more street, it's more chaotic, some of that gambler, like almost, to me, Viet's more embodied that Guak Tsai, like Huxley Wui vibe from like the 1980s Hong Kong, like lore, more than like Chinese do, even or Hong Kong people do in 2025, to be honest, on a more of a, we just look at a population distribution perspective. And then, there's just access to release valves in Bangkok and stuff like that. And just, man, it's just different, man. Point number 8, guys. Like I said, when you neglect and when you pour all the energy water into the achievement and money buckets and academics, but you completely neglect the cool swag, testosterone, machismo buckets, yes, you can over-index on them. Maybe there is some cultures, not saying yes, good or bad, but like Philippines probably could put more in the STEM and academics and money management bucket, but they got all up on the machismo bucket, right? But I'm saying you can't completely ignore it. It's all about a balance, right? And basically, when you ignore the cups that are identity, soul, sexuality, religion, spirituality, which they have none of, to be honest, in China, like it just creates a vacuum. And basically what happens is you're so Confucian to your core, and nobody even knows what Confucius thought, by the way, guys. Like Confucianism is up for interpretation just like any religion. But it's like, basically what happens is when there's no sex, there's no swag, there's no social status for the men, they will implode. They will be addicted to cam girls. They will need sexy girls to sell them like something for 5 seconds on Taobao. They will need to line, in this case, potentially even line up for someone like Sister Hong. And it's just because without joy or primal outlets, masculinity becomes cannibalistic. Look at prison. Look at American prison. I don't even need to get into the details. And long story short, basically, hyper-Confucianism is great for internal stability. Hyper testosterone warriors or whatever, they don't jeopardize statehood, and central statehood is the core of everything, and maintaining the harmony for the society. But they have to build in more release valves. There's no fight, there's no fire, there's no flirt right now. Everything is centered around like all the top, shout out to Jackson Wang, he's friends with my brother, but Jackson Wang's getting everything, and the Miles Moretti's getting everything, and even like Da Shan, who's like getting everything, you know what I mean? And it's like the average guy, even a slightly above average guy, getting nothing, and it creates an environment of desperation. And I'll tell you this, like I said, back to my central core theme, desperate people do desperate things where you go, I wouldn't do that. Hell no, I wouldn't do that. Because you're not desperate and you're not from that situation. So anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think. Long story short, that's my take on it. There's other things in there. There's an unbalanced gender ratio and et cetera, but those are my thoughts on the Sister Hong incident. Larger takeaways for sure, guys. Let me know what you think. I'm not saying I hit every point. I just did this in one take. By the way, guys, let me know if you guys like these videos. I just try to give you what I can. And definitely check out Asia Unfiltered Pod on IG and on TikTok, because I got a lot more where that came from with my co-host Win out here in Bangkok. I don't know what to do, man. Like a lot of things, I can't change things. You can't change the American political system. I can't change how China does or does not address male masculinity. I just point it out.